You briefly spoke about how governments are being toppled in Asia. We have example of Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal. Do you think is there a sort of any sort of US deep state at work in India to destabilize the current government or current regime?
Uh, Look, first of all, we have to understand or define what deep state means. Okay, there are multiple definitions of what deep state is. If you ask Mr. Trump, he's going to have a certain definition of deep state. If you ask other entities outside of the US, they will have a different definition of deep state. When Mr. Trump came to power, he fired lots of bureaucrats, and he said that he's cleaning out the deep state. Right? He's draining the swamp and so on. So according to Mr. Trump, deep state means the unaccountable bureaucrats who serve lifelong positions in the US establishment, maybe the Pentagon, maybe other departments and so on. So that is Mr. Trump's definition of deep state, the unaccountable bureaucracy. Let's trim that down and the deep state is taken care of. From a different perspective, deep state means or could mean, it comes from a Turkish word, daulat something, I forget the full term, but it comes from, the meaning is that there exists apparently, allegedly, an unaccountable, extra constitutional, extra democratic, extra electoral, extra government center of power in the US or maybe outside the US that controls that nation. Okay, so it is something that is outside of the government, so that people can't affect it. They can't vote that sort of thing out of power. If you don't like the president, you can vote him out. But if there's a deep state that is super presidential, that even controls your presidents, then what will you do? So does it exist? Does it not exist? Well, most academics would give you the consensus that it is a controversy theory, right? But maybe it does exist because you can see signs and symptoms of that. Sometimes US presidents who don't align with certain objectives or initiatives, they are either 1963 like Kennedy, or maybe something like that 2020 happens when Trump claims that the election was stolen from him. So clearly there are powers that are clearly more powerful than the US president. The Federal Reserve Bank of the United States, right? Who owns it? Does the US government own it? The US government doesn't own it. They will say that it has, shareholders, stakeholders who are distributed among various other banks in the US and so on and so forth. But that's very muddy. It's very muddled, and it's essentially a private bank that essentially controls and owns the US economy, which means the US is owned by somebody who we don't know. Maybe a small group of people, maybe a larger group of people. There have been various business people who have said that there exists maybe, for example, the Sri Lankan born American entrepreneur Chamath Palihapitiya. He once said, and I'm sure that he regrets saying it, that it's a small group of maybe 150 men who control the entire world and all the global finances, and by extension, the global geopolitics all over. So clearly something like this does exist, a deep state.